Welcome to the Healthcare Now new member webinar, and welcome to Healthcare Now. We're a single issue organization dedicated solely to fighting for Medicare for all, and we're thrilled to have you join this fight with us. My name is Stephanie Nakajima. I do communications here at Healthcare Now, and I got into this fight back in 2012, starting as an intern at MassCare, which is the Massachusetts state single payer organization. And I decided I wanted to be involved after being uninsured in my 20s, in my early 20s. I had a pre-existing condition, and that was back before, of course, even the ACA. And so I was sort of bouncing between low benefit, low wage jobs, and didn't have health insurance or had really bad health insurance, and dealing with sort of uncontrolled asthma on a daily basis. And I didn't get any of that sorted out until I moved to Japan, which has a great public healthcare system. And for the first time in my adult life, got care, basically. And I decided after that I was either gonna stay outside of the States or I was gonna come back to fuck up the insurance companies. So here I am, and thank you for joining us. Let me go ahead and start the slideshow. All right. So I thought at first I would talk a little bit about how Healthcare Now came to be. So pop quiz, who is the man on the left? I wonder how many of y'all will know who he is. So in 2003, 18 years ago, that man, who is Congressman John Conyers Jr., then rep of the Detroit area, announced that he was going to introduce landmark single payer legislation, which was HR 676. So universal health care had not been seriously considered by the legislature in decades, and Congressman Conyers knew that he could not advance that legislation at that time. But activist Marilyn Clement, who's there on the right, a longtime community organizer for civil rights and healthcare, decided to create a new organization with the goal of building the grassroots movement that would eventually pass single-payer healthcare. Her vision was to bring together a large coalition of healthcare, labor, community, and faith-based communities that would work together on a truly sort of outsider grassroots push for the bill that Rep. John Conyers introduced back in 2003. So that year, HR 676 got 38 co-sponsors, actually respectable, including reps like, and this is really a blast from the past for those of you who were there. Jesse Jackson was an original co-sponsor, Dennis Kucinich, Barney Frank, and this was actually back at the time when Bernie Sanders was a rep. And of course, we also had longtime stalwarts like Elijah Cummings, John Lewis, and many others who are still in Congress. But we have actually grown quite a bit since then. After Conyers retired, the introduction of the bill was picked up by our now lead sponsor, Rep. Pramila Jayapal in the House, and Bernie Sanders in the Senate. Today we have, far from 38 co-sponsors back when it was introduced in 2003, 118 co-sponsors, and that's 3 times as many as we started with. And that is over half of the Democratic delegation in the House. So as you can see, we're, this is how it looks like in the House. We're doing okay. Co-sponsors make up more than half of the Democratic delegation, as I said, but the remaining, so the dark blue here, those Democrats tend to come from wealthier, whiter districts that are going to be harder to move. It may completely not surprise you to hear that people of color, and especially women of color, are the reps who are holding up the Medicare for All legislation in the House. And actually, a lot of the remaining people that we still have to organize are white reps, white senators, of course, and their constituents who are also a little bit sort of disproportionately white compared to the other reps, the constituents of the other reps who are already on. And the Senate, we have sort of the same issue, but it's even worse because the Senate is, senators represent their entire state. So we tend to have less progressive senators. And so, those Democrats, the 36% of the Senate that we still need to move there to get to even just 50% of the Senate, that's going to be another larger push. And I think that a lot of coalition building is going to be necessary to push senators who are notoriously more difficult than reps. But overall, I would say that, we have come quite a far way. And sometimes people will say that, oh, we're not getting anywhere with Medicare for all. But the fact that we have gone from, let's see, 23 reps, or how many did I just say? No, I can't remember how many it was. 38 reps to 118 and counting. We're actually got multiple active campaigns in remaining districts. And so we expect to have more than 118 at the close of this year. But that's a huge jump from where we started. So our mission remains, of course, from its founding, to win national single payer legislation. But we also support state level campaigns, and there's fairly robust campaigns happening in New York, especially California, Massachusetts, where we are here in healthcare now. And that we also support those campaigns in any way that we can, including their infrastructure, their training, providing materials, all that kind of stuff. All right, so just to talk a little bit about our strategy to win, many of the sort of DC-based groups have a very insider strategy where they try to cultivate relationships with legislators and then try to win them over with policy arguments, or, and that's ultimately gets us very little, I would say. That gets us, I would say, crumbs. And so we don't do that at all. We don't have many insider connections, actually. We don't have the ear of even our lead sponsors all that much. We do have, a very grassroots people power theory of change in which collective constituent accountability is actually more important than making a good argument to your legislator. And that, I think, is going to win single payer. I believe that we're going to win a Medicare for all system when we get a critical mass of representatives who will vote yes on the bill. And that is not going to be an easy yes. They will be facing an onslaught of industry money and attacks. And by the way, when this happens, when we will get this, critical mass of legislators on the bill, it is not going to be because they've been won over by these good arguments, but because they realize that they are going to lose their seat if they do not vote yes on the bill. And that's actually going to be sort of the litmus test for when we have amassed enough power to pass Medicare for all, first through the House and then there's the Senate. And that is going to take organizing, not just in the progressive areas, but in every Democratic district in the country. In order to pass Medicare for all, we basically we can afford to lose one or two Democrats as the House is constituted right now. We really can't afford to lose basically any. And so that means that we need a lot more organizing in the districts that are not supporting Medicare for all right now. All right. So quick primer on Medicare for all. And I think that if you're watching this, then you probably already know how Medicare for all works and don't really need a whole single payer 101. So I'll just go through this quickly. So Medicare for all, of course, would replace the current non-system of healthcare with a single public plan that would cover everyone for all medically necessary care. So everyone would be covered, undocumented, unemployed, regardless of any outside factor, you will be covered and you cannot ever lose that coverage. Instead of paying premiums and copays, which are regressive because they take a much bigger chunk out of the pockets of lower income working people. It's crazy to think that I'm paying the same for my healthcare premiums as Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. We'd fund Medicare for all together as a society through progressive taxation, making it much more equitably funded. And that actually is efficient because it saves money than, having multiple insurers, administrating multiple plans. And by removing, of course, middlemen and the profits that come with them, right? So health insurance companies not just health insurance companies, but also pharmacy benefit managers and all of the other various leeches on the healthcare system. So this is just sort of a list of some of the benefits that would be covered under Medicare for All system. And I just want to also mention on this slide that, there are many areas here that won't immediately become more equitable just because we have a Medicare for All system. Mental health, for example, we have a lot of structural issues in terms of providers. We don't have enough providers for mental health to actually deliver the kind of long-term care that we envision being available to everybody in the United States. We simply don't have enough caretakers for that. And then reproductive care, of course, we also have a lot of laws to untangle that have been used to basically prevent abortions from happening in southern states. So there's a whole other tangle of issues that we will still have to deal with in order to get true equal health care for everybody. But at least what Medicare for All would do is distribute the resources that we do have right now equitably, and that is to provide care by need rather than ability to pay. So again, America spends a lot on healthcare, not inherently a bad thing, but looking at the way that it's spent, it's clearly inefficient and exploitative. We have very little to show for the fact that our healthcare spending is almost twice the average of other wealthy countries. It's shocking to me that Switzerland, which if you've ever been to that part of the world, things cost a lot of money there, that we are spending so much more than the Swiss are for their healthcare, and they have great healthcare. It's not the best, but they do have pretty good healthcare. Then for prescription drugs, we of course pay more for prescription drugs than any other country, and that's because other countries' governments negotiate with drug makers on behalf of their residents. Here you can see how much more we pay relative to Canada, France, and Germany than we are paying here in the US for life-saving drugs. And some of these cases are really a significant percentage. So frequently asked questions, where is my, oh, there it is. Well, why won't single payer lead to longer wait times and rationing of care? No, with our current profit-driven healthcare system, resources, as I just mentioned, are rationed based on ability to pay, and with single payer, it would of course change to those to allocating based on need. And I think that, another thing here about longer wait times and rationing of care is that we are so rationed currently just by health insurance companies. When you get really sick, that's when you get really expensive, and that's when they start rationing you. And a public system will not do that. And the other element on rationing is that, doctors and nurses, they spend a lot of their time on administration. And that time should actually be spent on patient care instead of administration. And so we're actually being rationed just by the structure of the healthcare system, getting less units of care than we otherwise could get if, we had a single payer system where doctors were, the administration and all of that stuff was taken care of for healthcare providers. What will happen to the displaced workers once Medicare for All is passed? So yeah, it's true. that, one of the ways that Medicare for All saves money is by, just as we were talking about, reducing administration. And that means that some people are going to lose their jobs who work in administration. Not all of them, obviously, because we still need people to administer the Medicare for All plan, but many of them will. And so HR 1976, which is the current House bill, guarantees that at least 1% of the budget for up to 5 years will be allocated to these workers. And they'll receive additional assistance that includes wage replacement, retirement benefits, job training and placement, preferential hiring, and education benefits. Another question we're asked sometimes: I have good health benefits through my work. Why would I want single payer reform? Speaking personally as somebody who has lived in Denmark, had a single payer there, lived in Japan, had public health insurance there, there is no plan here in the US that could ever be as good as those plans were, because I did not have such a thing as a network in Denmark. There was no such thing as like, you can only go to this doctor or this doctor, and you can only, this is your deductible or whatever. There is no such thing as that, right? You just go to the doctor, and then the doctor decides what you need. And then whatever it is that you need, there's no like, what do you call them? Pre-authorizations or anything. That's what you get. The answer we have here is that many with good workplace insurance have found that serious illness or injury can leave them unemployed and lose their health insurance. Federal single payer could improve job quality, make switching jobs easier, and take stress off of small business. And I think ultimately, single payer is very much so a worker reform, something that gives power back to workers and takes it out of the hands of employers. Would Medicare for All cover abortions? Yes, it would. The Hyde Amendment, which prevents public funds from being used on abortions except in cases of emergency, is reapproved yearly by Congress to block federal funds, and this amendment will be repealed with the passing of Medicare for All, thereby fostering improved health equity. And we actually may already be on our way to repealing the Hyde Amendment, because it was not included for the first time in the House's budget that was passed just this. So I'm filming this in August. So this was so we still have yet to see whether or not it gets all the way, but there is a lot of appetite right now in Congress for finally ending Hyde, which is actually a part of Medicare for All. And so if we are able to really end Hyde and get federal funds all the way through to Medicare, to Medicaid, we're actually passing a piece of Medicare for All. Okay, so before I go into the volunteer roles that we have also single payer trainings that you can take at the single payer school for free. So they include telling your healthcare story. So we teach people, we go through with people their personal healthcare story. You may not think you have a healthcare story, but I guarantee you, if you go through our training, you'll find out you do have a healthcare story, and we will teach you how to present it in like a short version, a short 30-second pitch, then like a 2-minute pitch, and then a longer pitch if you want to do like an op-ed or something like that. And telling your healthcare story is, I think, a huge organizing tool to relate to other people who are also struggling with the healthcare system, and for finding resonance and community with all of us who are basically oppressed by this healthcare system. And then we have single payer policy training. If you want to hear more policy, you can take that training, or if you just feel like maybe you want a little bit more sort of a more thorough background on policy before you start going out to canvas. If you're afraid that you won't be able to answer questions, I feel like it's good to go through the policy training. And then grassroots legislative advocacy, which is my personal favorite that we have on the single payer school right now, which sort of goes through like developing and executing a strategic campaign to move your legislator on single payer healthcare. So you're going to like create a power map. choose your legislator and score them, and then develop a series of escalating tactics that will use your power to move your legislator. Okay. So we are just starting. It's a big, grand experiment, so we'll see how it goes. This series of a national Medicare for All volunteer teams. So we are a staff of 2. Ben is my colleague, and he is the executive director, and I do communications, but really we just like share. We have like a sphere of work and we cut it down the middle, and I do half and he does the other half. And we realized that, we could actually do so much more if we were able to get volunteers to sort of carry out a lot of our work. Then we can actually do more in more states, and then also take on new areas of work, right? So we are now seeking volunteers to fill, a broad range of important roles and teams, which I'm about to go over. And some roles are smaller and, maybe not that time intensive, and other are fairly significant and might be better for somebody who has a lot of time on their hands. And then some are just for a set period. So like volunteers who are going to work on the conference, that's just sort of like it starts in December and then it ends in February. And then others are just ongoing. So you'll be doing them as long as you'd like to do them. Okay, so the first volunteer team we have is the National Speakers Bureau of Patients. So, we're building this Bureau of Patients, Speakers Bureau of Patients, to empower patients to share their story with reporters who are covering healthcare and healthcare reform, with legislators and other policymakers, and to groups interested in learning more, advocating for Medicare for All. So if you're interested in joining, the Speakers Bureau for Medicare for All, then there's a couple ways you can get trained. So the first is to do a quick Zoom training with one of us, or to take the online course that I was just talking about a couple slides before. And again, the purpose of that is to help sharpen the story, make it ready for speech and print, create a couple different versions and all of that. And then we put your story up on the website under the Speakers Bureau. And then if reporters, could like search for you, and then if they wanted to reach out to you, we'd connect you. And then, you could also choose to be available to tell your story at, speaking engagements at events. We often get, requests, somebody in, Chicago who can tell their story at our, Medicare for All event or whatever, or rally. And that's one way you can participate in the Speakers Bureau. You could also help us maintain and run the Bureau online and help doing trainings and that kind of thing. So that's the first team. Oh, I'm not, here we go. I think I skipped one. Fundraising, yes. So fundraising is not always the most appreciated role, but we must basically do better and broader fundraising to grow our organizing and education work. Fundraising for Medicare for All is one of the toughest work out there because foundations don't give for Medicare for All work. It's just very, it's a redistributive policy, and it would raise taxes significantly on wealthy people. And so it's not something they really want to give to. And this shows in how many full-time staff there are for in Medicare for All world. I think there's maybe fewer than 20 in the entire country dedicated Medicare for All, just dedicated to Medicare for All work. Here are 2 of them, myself and my colleague. And when you think about how popular Medicare for All is, it's really astounding, actually, that there isn't more money and staff for Medicare for All. So, this movement is always going to be volunteer-led. Hi, Schnookums. But, if you have experience with nonprofits fundraising, then your skills could be super necessary to help us basically grow the movement for Medicare for All. So that could be grant writing, major donors, smaller donors, and whatever else I can't think of because I'm not really, fundraising isn't in my wheelhouse. Okay, social media and comms. So we use, a wide range of social media to provide our activists with information about, broader Medicare for All movement, news, try to do education, and also especially the ability to engage, in new organizing campaigns. So, if you're fluent in Twitter or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, we definitely have a place for you. I think right now, one of our biggest needs is for people who can do some sort of graphic design, and also for people who are just really social media savvy. And then the other thing is that I think that would be useful in the comms media team would be somebody who could help develop press work and earned media, which is not really something we do right now. Okay, priority district organizing. So our priority districts are places with Democratic reps who are not yet co-sponsors of the Medicare for All bill. That pie chart you saw where just over half are co-sponsors, we are focusing on the Dems. Every Dem obviously should be a co-sponsor of Medicare for All, but many are still holding out. And we need volunteers who live in these priority districts to help carry out a long-term strategy to get their representative to support Medicare for All. And let's say you're a volunteer, outside of it, let's say you're a volunteer in a district and your representative does support Medicare for All, but you still want to help out, maybe supporting organizing in the priority districts. You can definitely sign up for the team as well. So this is a role that everybody can do. And I think it's actually kind of one of our most important roles. Okay, event planning. So we organize one major event per year, that is the Medicare for All strategy conference. And then we do 2 to 3 local events per year. And so that's, what we call an Everybody Institute, where, everybody in a certain geographical area comes together for a weekend of strategizing, skill building, and hopefully kicking off a new campaign for Medicare for All. So if you have experience with, event planning, including both in-person, online events, then we could really use your help in expanding or just helping to run any of these 3 kinds of events. All right, so legal research. So this team will not be filing lawsuits, but we will focus on uncovering what the opposition is doing to undermine Medicare for All. So one example is that in Florida recently, we found out that a state legislator there had filed a bill, an anti-Medicare for All bill. It's like a preemptive bill in Florida. And we were wondering why they were filing this bill since, it's not, it doesn't seem like Florida is a place where we're going to get Medicare for All at the state level anytime soon. But it seemed like what was happening was that the ALEC, that network of evil conservative lobbyists, was using Florida as a sandbox to try to pass anti-Medicare for All legislation. The legislation essentially said we can only pass a Medicare for All system in the state of Florida with a 2/3 vote of the legislature. They wanted to make that a law. And I think that what was happening, or we think what was happening there, was that ALEC was trying to sandbox it through Florida to see if it could be passed in a more progressive state where it's actually maybe likely to pass, like New York, California, Massachusetts, wherever. And so we wanted to file a Freedom of Information request, but this was we're not lawyers, we don't know how to do this. So this is a scenario in which, the legal research and support team would really come in handy. Okay. So public education. So public education, I'll just preface it with that we get so much interest in, the public education committee, but we actually only have 2 projects that we really need more volunteers for right now. And so that is, the improved Medicare for All booklet that we're about to reissue next year. I think it was last updated in 2019. And then we're also doing a video series on what happened to the single payer initiative in Vermont that failed, sort of became, a warning for all of single payer activists trying to do state single payer. And so I think that, if you are really interested in public education, you really think that this is where you belong in the movement, then definitely, apply. But if one of the other teams seems like it could be a better fit for you, especially the organizing, I think we need more people, then I would definitely encourage you to go there. All right, project management. So project managers, they are the glue that holds everything together. We can't really start a project without having a project manager. So project manager is going to assign tasks to appropriate volunteers, organize team meetings, do the individual follow-up to ensure all the tasks are being completed on time, and generally just, make sure things are moving on from step A to step B. If you have professional experience as a project manager or simply well-organized, good at supervision and able to coordinate teams working together, then this would be a great role for you. And then finally, we have onboarding new activists. So, you guys are coming to healthcare now for the first time, and we would love to do this sort of as an interactive webinar that we have several times a month, instead of just like a video. But for now, we're just sort of sandboxing this and seeing how it goes. And we think that maybe we can dramatically improve engagement with our new signups by actually reaching out to people individually, and sort of getting them integrated maybe in a volunteer team or something like that. And so we really need people who are going to assist with, all of the new members that we're getting right now, and maybe do even like one-on-ones or something like that. So, so those are all of the volunteer committees that we have up and running right now. If you have any questions, then you can shoot me an email, stephanie@healthcare-now.org, and you can find that on the website as well. We're on Twitter @HCNNow, and would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, you can also fill out the form on the website. And thank you very much for coming.